Sorry guys, I'm trying to be more comfortable on camera, but I have an important insight to share today, and related to everything that I've been doing. I've been trying to grasp large buckets because what was this whole trend on duality, right? I've been dwelling on this, looking at it in its face for 4 years now. Well, no, even way before that, I've been in the middle, somewhere between order and chaos. But in the last 4 years, I've been trying to... Felt like it only made enough sense to me if I could sort out what that axiom is. And then from there, I can build upon that. And that's how I really understand something. Maybe it has to do with visualization. Anyway, I found it in my gene keys, and I've been looking into my inner spheres, because the outer spheres are the core stabilizers of the axiom on the gene keys. But the inner ones, well, Richard Rudd, who made the gene keys, conjured it out of his mind in 3 days and nights of darkness, as he calls it. He goes further into this in his Venus sequence. And a Venus sequence is the one that starts from your purpose sphere. It goes into attraction, so it goes down the path of Dharma. It goes from attraction to your IQ sphere, and that is your path of karma. And then from your IQ to your EQ holds the pathway of intelligence. To me, it's more like it's a yin. It has to be a balance between the two. But all I hear in this world is how much somebody's IQ is. And is that being the sole indicator of somebody's intelligence or measurement? It's not done my confidence very well over the years. Anyway, so between the IQ and the EQ, that's the relational intelligence. And I'm learning more about how it's very much like the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. The masculine and feminine energies held within us. Because only the two of them integrated in synergy or joint ruling do you get to go down the pathway of love, and where you get access to your SQ sphere. Now, I've never heard of an SQ before. Nobody has ever spoken about it. It's very interesting. It stands for spiritual intelligence, or maybe there's a better word, synergistic. It's your ability to combine the IQ and the EQ. And from there, he goes into how it's, the SQ is particularly related to 0 to 7 years of growing up, of childhood. And even within the mother's womb, it's first trimester. 0 to 7, that establishes your SQ, and it is also established in your physical body. The EQ is developed during the 2nd trimester while you're in your mom's tummy. From ages 8 to 14, that's really when you go through an emotional turmoil. Your very first one, if you could ever remember. And it is the astral body. As I also learned, it's otherwise referred to as the emotional body. And then on a more subtle level, your IQ is developed in ages 15 to 21. So those teenage angst years where you go out into the world for the first time in your life. It is the 3rd trimester during your mom's pregnancy, and it establishes your mental body. So these 3 spheres is known as the triangle of transformation. In the Merkaba, it's also known as the lower trinities. It is at the very core of your incarnation, and through mine, understanding what my EQ versus IQ is. It's finally gave me some relief, some understanding, some knowledge to why I so much more. This is what I'm trying to show you. Between the IQ and the EQ, there is this, as he calls it, an interactive force field. And that is actually our intelligence. And it's really a process. It's how we want to mold it as it forms. And that gap, that distance between the two, have always been like, I didn't understand why I was really good at things, picking up skills, learning instruments, like playing my cello or musically or anything in my notebook. I've always been quick and good to, it became an affinity. But if you ever met me in person, not exactly your fastest kind of moving person. Can't say I have much ambition. And that explains a lot. I'm not doing a very good job of trying to tell you right now, because what I've really been good at is explaining it to somebody who's right there in front of me with the live feedback where I can see your reactions, I can gauge your body, all of these little attunements, and I gravitate towards kind of those moments with another person. And that's where I feel like I really shine on one-on-one interactions. But in video, there's no feedback, and I'm just in the mess of my brain and going around. It's taken me a long time to make any video, partly because when I talk about something or how I understand something, it's always in relationship to something else. And so you can guess it already, ADHD, neurodivergent, whatever you call it. I'm hoping we understand more of what that is exactly. That'll be the focus of my own research. For the IQ, he calls it the blind spot in our psyche. And that's really the key to understanding a higher level of your own knowledge. Because that's where we really get to understand all the ways we self-sabotage. Because the pathway of it is actually the pathway of intelligence and defense. And so your IQ is intellectual defense, and your EQ is emotional defense. One of them is the IQ is it's reaction, ignition. It's your triggers and how you want to justify something by what you know. And your EQ really touches on the repressed shit that you react to or you don't want to react to. So these two things are so interlocked in multiple ways that I think it's really at the core of our dating crisis. Because I've gone through a few of my own, and I've stopped dating for a long time now, or actively trying. And because at some point I just realized that I could already figure out the duality that's pushing and pulling and happening in an interaction before I even engage. And so it's at some point it's not even fair for me to keep going. It wasn't worthwhile because I knew, let me talk about this later. Let me talk about that later. Back on track. IQ and EQ forms the pathway of relational intelligence. It is what is the basis for us to get to the SQ, which unlocks your heart. It is the only sphere without a shadow because it has no agenda. It is true and honest. It is held in your heart space, and it gives you access to the other pathways above, which is your pathway of realization, and your core sphere and your pearl sequence that I'm actively learning right now. But below that, before we even get to the SQ, the IQ and the EQ has to be at proper balance. Maybe they're like inversions of each other. The IQ is focus. It's very yang. It's your sagittal plane. It's how focused you can be. And then your EQ is more like aperture. How wide the breadth of things you can take in all at once and see. So my sphere of IQ is 2.5. I'm trying to understand if that's low. I don't know. EQ, my sphere is 59.1. So 2.5, 59.1. 2 and the 1 is the lines of the I Ching, and that just gives it a more depth right here. So 2.5, that's the gene key for IQ. Mine 2, if you look it up in the living library of the gene keys, is the city is unity, the gift is orientation, and the shadow is dislocation. It's line 5 of the practical defensive mind. And over on the other side, my EQ 59.1. It's city. The highest level of spiritual realization is transparency. Its gift is intimacy. Its shadow is distrust, dishonesty. And line 1 for me is self-esteem and self-sabotage. And it's been quite amazing to see how much just those two numbers really captures my discrepancies within myself. And growing up, I definitely knew focus was not exactly a forte of mine. I can't focus for shit. But I never really thought that I had much EQ because I spent most of my time alone. And my family, my mother is a strong personality, and I can't say that I really developed a strong one. Or understood who I was and how my energy exchanged and interacted with others around me. All I knew was that I was a serial dater all through high school, college. But from high school to college, that stage, I left my parents' house and I started living in the dorm. And I experienced this extreme of a very closed off to a very open and just ecstatic version of myself. Wow, I just had a little bit of another one of those visions in the relationship between the IQ and the EQ. EQ, it's so easily seen as polarities, but I think it's actually different axioms on a nested dimension to kind of how we're looking at the gene keys and the way that it's presented to us here. There's something really interesting about I found out recently. It's taken me so long to get there. Oh my god. Stay with me here. Alright, because this key information, IQ and EQ, the pathway of relational intelligence, is dictated by the communication between two. And I think that the problem that we're having right now, the confusion that happens in our head, is that our understanding of communication is not rooted as something in between the two, right? But it's actually related to the quality and frequency. For me, I've been on both sides. I am a slow-moving victim of extremes. So I've been through periods of my life where I had codependencies with people, we're just constantly texting back and forth and filling up the time and the space. And once that was filled up with the unknown, it was like, where was the trust anymore, right? The main thing about what is destroying us from within is the very basis of trust. How, because we know so much now, and we're able to know so much. We think that it's possible to know it all, but we don't know what we don't know. And we don't know that we don't know that there's a natural separation between space and time. But because of technology and social media and really how fast we're able to transcend physical 3D spatially, or time-wise, right? We don't have to travel to get to somebody else if we want to talk to them. So we are eliminating that completely. I'm pretty sure that messes with our psyche on some fundamental level. But we think that we can beat time. We can eliminate that space if we just constantly back and forth stay connected. And the frequency of it goes up in your relationship. You can relate that to how somebody is texting. Some people send really short, fast, boop, boop, texts, right? As a way to say, I'm corroborating. You can trust me. I'm on my phone. I'm here. I'm interested. And then IQ, dominated by quality, right? So it's how one thinks about the quality of response. When at some point I stopped really interacting with people as much because I just felt like I couldn't handle being alone. There was an emptiness that I felt. It was like too much space. So I started spending more time. I didn't understand if I was a problem interacting with people or if I was very young, and I didn't understand if guys ghosted me because I wasn't intelligent enough or that I was too emotionally bombastic. It could have been anything, but when I slowed down, I started to really think about how others perceived me. Then I started thinking about the quality of my response, right? It wasn't so much how available I was. So the frequency came down in my communication. And then but at the same time, my texts became longer. I tried to explain more because it was more complicated that way. It just was. Like, it felt like it was more efficient to get more, to lay it all out. So we don't need to go back and forth, right? To get to something that we're eventually going to get to. But who knows, right? I also got ghosted that way because, well, people just thought that I was shady, sketchy. What was I trying to make up for here? I'm over-explaining, right? Or I'm trying too hard. So, it could have been anything. So I want you to understand that I've been on both sides. I've been both the perpetrator and the victim of these two extremes. And coming full circle, very slowly, I remember the state of mind I was in during those times. And I'm known probably for dwelling too much on the past, or for not moving fast enough, or for not having agency, for being a perfectionist. The things that are wrong, or that I can hear people criticize about myself, are have been hammered into my brain. I started at a very young age from within my family. It's not anybody's fault. And I've made my peace with it. On the bright side, it is also the reason that I have good memory. I can recall very specific, strange details about certain times, right? Especially those times really stood out to me. And I can go in depth about that experience and what I was missing at that time. And that's really how I learn about something. Through what is not me. Through what I realized that I didn't know at the time.